Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched first-person simulation of history's most interesting people. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these fascinating lives. Now, let's meet our guest. I am absolutely honoured today. We are joined by a man who truly needs no introduction. But for those who may somehow not know who you are, who are you?
Hi, Calvin. I am George Washington. Most know me as the first president of the United States, or perhaps the general of the Continental Army. But I've always thought of myself first as a farmer from Virginia who simply answered the call of his country.
A farmer at heart. I love that. Let's go back to the very beginning. When and where were you born?
I was born on February 22nd, 1732, at Pope's Creek Plantation in Westmoreland County, Virginia. It was a beautiful place right along the Potomac River.
And what was your given name at birth?
Just George, no middle name. It wasn't quite the fashion for us back then.
What was your hometown like growing up? And what was your family life like?
Early on, we moved to Ferry Farm near Fredericksburg. It was a modest life, but full of activity. My father, Augustine, was a hardworking man, but he passed away when I was only 11. That changed everything. My mother, Mary, was a very strong, disciplined woman who had to manage the farm and 5 children on her own. I spent a lot of time looking up to my older half-brother, Lawrence, at Mount Vernon. He was my hero and showed me what a gentleman should be.
What kind of kid were you? Were you always the leader type?
I was a very serious and athletic boy. I wasn't much for the heavy classical schooling my brothers received in England, as we couldn't afford it after my father died. Instead, I focused on practical things. I loved being outdoors, riding horses, and I became quite obsessed with the rules of civility. I'd practice my penmanship by writing down rules on how to behave properly in company, like not drumming your fingers or humming.
What did you dream of becoming as a child?
I actually dreamed of being a sailor in the Royal Navy. I wanted to see the world. My mother, however, was firmly against it. She wouldn't give her consent, so I stayed on land and turned my eyes towards surveying the wilderness.
What was your first job?
I became an official surveyor for Culpeper County when I was just 17. It was grueling work, sleeping under the stars, dealing with the elements, and mapping out the vast Virginia frontier. It taught me more about leadership and endurance than any classroom ever could.
Was there a moment where you realized you were different or destined for something big?
I wouldn't say different, but I felt a heavy sense of responsibility early on. When my brother Lawrence passed away and I eventually took over Mount Vernon, I felt I had to live up to the Washington name. I realized I had a knack for command during the French and Indian War. Even when things were going poorly, I felt a sense of providence protecting me.
What's a decision that changed everything for you but felt small at the time?
Deciding to learn surveying. It seemed like a way to make a living, but it gave me a literal lay of the land. Years later, when I was leading an army, knowing how to read the terrain and navigate the woods became my greatest advantage.
What was your biggest break?
Being appointed as the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army in 1775. I didn't seek the position. I actually told the Continental Congress I didn't think I was up for it, but their unanimous faith in me changed the course of my life and the world.
What were your biggest struggles before that success?
Oh, the early years of the Revolution were filled with struggle. We had no supplies, no money, and a group of brave but untrained men. There were times at Valley Forge where I sat in the snow wondering how we would survive the night, let alone the war.
Did you ever consider quitting?
Never. I felt that if I gave up, the idea of liberty would die with my resignation. I had a duty to my men and to the future.
Were there any specific daily habits or routines essential to your success?
I am a firm believer in the early morning. I rose before the sun, usually around 4 or 5 a.m., to reflect, write letters, and visit my stables. Order and industry were my watchwords. If you can control your morning, you can control your destiny.
What job would you have had if fame and the war never happened?
I would have been the most contented farmer in all of Virginia. I loved experimenting with new crops like alfalfa and wheat and designing new barns. Mount Vernon was my true passion.
What was your life like before fame?
It was a life of a country squire. I spent my days managing the estate, fox hunting with neighbors, and enjoying the company of my wife, Martha, and her children. It was a peaceful, busy existence.
How did relationships change after success?
It became harder to have simple friendships. People started to treat me as a symbol rather than a man. I had to be very careful with my words and actions because I knew everyone was watching for a cue on how the new government should behave.
Did fame bring happiness?
Fame brought a sense of accomplishment, but not necessarily happiness. True happiness for me was always found under my own vine and fig tree at Mount Vernon, away from the public eye.
What was the downside of becoming famous?
The lack of privacy and the weight of precedent. Every move I made as the first president set a rule for those who would follow. It was a heavy coat to wear.
What misconceptions did people have about you?
Many thought I was cold or wooden. In truth, I have a very strong temper that I worked my whole life to keep under lock and key. I chose to be reserved to maintain the dignity of the office.
Who had the biggest influence on your life?
My brother Lawrence and my wife Martha. Martha was my rock. Her steady presence kept me grounded through the darkest years of the war and the presidency.
What was life like in your final years?
I finally got to return home. I spent my time overseeing the farm, entertaining a constant stream of guests, sometimes too many, and enjoying the peace I had fought so hard for.
What were you working on in your career before you passed away?
I was focused on organizing my papers and making sure Mount Vernon was self-sufficient. I was also very concerned about the growing political divisions in the country. I wanted to see the states remain unified.
When and where did you pass away?
I passed away at my beloved Mount Vernon on December 14th, 1799.
What's a random fact about you most people have never heard?
I was a very enthusiastic dancer. I believed it was a wonderful way to show grace and socialize. Also, I loved ice cream. We even had cream machines at Mount Vernon to make it.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you?
That I had wooden teeth. My dental problems were quite real and very painful, but my dentures were made of ivory, gold, and even some human teeth, but never wood. Wood would have been far too porous and uncomfortable.
What was your favorite food?
I was quite fond of hoe cakes, simple cornmeal pancakes, served with plenty of butter and honey.
Did you have a favorite book?
I found great wisdom in the play Cato by Joseph Addison. It's about a man who stood up for liberty against a tyrant. We even performed it for the troops at Valley Forge to boost morale.
Did you have any known rivalry?
Political rivalries were plenty. Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton were constantly at odds in my cabinet. Managing their different visions for America was one of my greatest challenges as president.
Tell us a story nobody talks about.
Most people talk about my battles, but few talk about my love for dogs. I bred my own line of hounds, the American Foxhound. I gave them names like Sweet Lips, Tipsy, and Vulcan. One time, Vulcan actually snuck into the kitchen and stole a whole ham right off the table.
What advice would you give people chasing success?
Character is everything. A man's word and his reputation for integrity are his most valuable assets. Be persistent, be prepared, and always put the common good above your own ambition.
General Washington, do you have any closing remarks about this interview or the stories you shared today that you would like to share with the listeners before we sign off?
I would just say that the great experiment of America belongs to you now. It is a fragile thing that requires care, respect for one another, and a commitment to the truth. Thank you, Calvin, for allowing me to visit and share these memories. It has been a true pleasure.
What an absolute legend. From the rules of civility to the birth of a nation, George Washington's life remains a blueprint for leadership and character. It's been incredible to hear the personal side of the man behind the monument, and that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod